47th Virtual Facilitation Practice. This is amazing. And it's a safe space to share, explore, and learn together. This is the purpose. And so we are going to be here for 90 minutes. And just be aware of all alerts and distractions you may have. We have a lot of gadgets and like WhatsApps, emails, and phones, and all of that. So just be mindful that to be very present on this 90 minutes. And create a place to take notes, if you will. And chat is, spelling and grammar amnesty is in play. So we like to interact through chat as well.
Yeah. Let me put over here in the chat. Let's welcome our special guest, Ezra. It's funny, Ezra, because we never met face to face and we are so close. It's so interesting. So just a quick story. Carolina and I, we had a celebration of our anniversary. We were celebrating 20 years of marriage and 10 years in Canada. So these two round numbers went together and we decided to make something special. And then Ezra coached us. He was our mentor in making this ritual alive. And it was, the process of getting it alive was amazing. It was a ritual in itself. And what we did at the end was also amazing. We're so grateful for having this expertise on our side at that moment. So it was very special. Yeah. So that's a brief moment in life to share about our connection with this amazing man. So Ezra, thank you for making the time. I know your life is getting busier for a good reason. And yeah, happy to be here with you. So give people a taste of what is going to unfold today.
Thank you so much, Fernando and Carolina. Special. I usually only get one special, but two specials. That feels great. Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see some familiar faces. I don't know, think about 24 years ago, I think, when was the last time I led one of these. It feels like maybe 24, 23 years ago. But it's nice to see some familiar faces and to be back in this special space with all of you. My name's Ezra. I am a ritual designer. I've been researching and studying ritual for the last decade or so, and started a creative studio called Ritualist that specializes in the design of secular ritual. It's the coolest job ever. I'm happy to talk about that another time. But I care deeply about the experiences that we have together, and want to elevate them as special and meaningful and memorable, and that's what I've really dedicated my life to. I was gonna do a whole opening ritual, but y'all sort of did it. So let's say this. I love this value of please turn off alerts and distractions, but I don't know if we actually did that. So here's what I'll say as a little extra ritual around that. I've been in your chair many times, and I have multitasked my way through many a workshop. And I completely understand that. And so what I will say is if you want to be half here and email in a little bit or checking the phone and multitasking, that's totally okay. You have full permission and blessing. Just making an intentional choice that that's what you're going to do. If you want to be fully here for the next, say, hour and a half or so that we have together, let's try this. Actually, let's all take out our phones if you have them on you. Let's just say goodbye. I don't know, give it a little kiss. Give it a little nice little tuck it in for a little sleep. Yeah, thank you so much. You're so wonderful, magic device. And then just put it somewhere where you don't see it. I'm gonna put mine in my drawer, somewhere that's not on your body or in front of you, just away. Thank you, phones. I'll see you soon. Don't worry. I'll be back. I'm not leaving. It's not goodbye. See you later. And I won't tell you to close your tabs in your browser, because just the thought alone strikes deep fear in my soul. But instead, if you want, you can just maximize the Zoom screen with that little green button up at the top, so that your whole screen now is Zoom, and that's all you see. In these virtual spaces, it can be tricky to transform the space, but just that little subtle tweak might call us into a little bit of presence. And I don't take for granted how special and how meaningful it is that every one of you decided to take 90 minutes out of your day to dedicate to learning and growing your talents. That's really incredible. And 90 minutes are hard to carve out. And I am sure we're going right from this into the next thing. And so I'm going to actually give us all the gift of 1 minute with nowhere to go and nothing to do. And if that's the only thing that you get out of this time, I hope you get more. But if that's the only thing that you carved out, just one delicious minute with nowhere to go and nothing to do, as my people say, Daenu, that would be enough. That would be enough. So one more time, we can turn off our screens or close our eyes. Just allow yourself to settle into your chair. And for the next minute, truly allow this moment, this minute, to be perfect, just the way it is. However you're feeling is perfect, just the way it is. Whatever you're thinking is perfect, just the way it is. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, nothing to change or fix or get or attain. Every one of us is coming in with deep wisdom and deep experience. I truly believe each one of you could teach this workshop. Before you open your eyes, as we gently move back into a doing state again, tap into that wisdom and experience that you've got. And try to think about, bring to mind an opening or a closing that you've either led or experienced that was remarkable, fire, that really landed, that has stuck with you, that you're proud of or haven't forgotten? Doesn't have to be big or spectacular. It can be small and mighty. Usually whatever the first thing you think about is great. Don't get too lost trying to find the perfect example. And now think about one opening or closing that you led or that you experienced that stunk, that was boring, forgettable, cringy. Sometimes it's so forgettable, it's hard to remember. That's okay. It didn't stick with you. But if you got something, just try to hold on to it, bring it into your mind's eye. Now, last thing, we're all coming in with our wisdom and our experiences. We're also coming in with our questions, our unknowns, our beginner's minds, which is perhaps the wisest thing of all, is our questions. So if there's one question, one burning question, you saw the title of this session and you were like, I'm gonna go to that. Something drove you here. Perhaps there's a question that you're looking to explore or have answered. Whenever you feel like you've landed on it, you can open your eyes and type it into the chat so we can have a little record of the burning questions that are in the room today. What makes beginnings and endings particularly magic? Ooh, and when you type in your question, you can turn on your video too. It'll be like a little Brady Bunch moment as you sparkle back onto Zoom. How might I design group rituals that incorporate movement and or somatic experience? Is there a ritual beginning or closing that is above and beyond significant what I have already done? How to design a beginning where I, as a facilitator, step into an already running session and do just parts of it? How can I tighten my closing so they are impactful and clear? Yeah, Irish goodbye. I feel that, Chris, for sure. How can we consistently get the amazing closing and never the stinky ones? Great question. I hope that we can answer that one. What types of rituals increase connection? Things to think about when creating disability-friendly openings and closings for participants who might be blind or low vision. Beautiful. Wonderful questions. Yeah. Great. We'll fill this hour, no problem. All right. So beautiful. You can keep these questions going. I'll do my best to keep my eyes on the chat. Before we dive in, I think Fernando and Carolina, we're going to break off into groups of 2 for meeting, getting to know each other a little bit more. And I'll invite you to share your the opening and closings that you brought into your mind's eye, the ones that shined and the ones that stunk, as and of course your names and where you're from and all that good stuff too.
What do you think, Carolina? 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
5 minutes
Sounds
in
great.
pairs. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. See you in a bit. Boom. Let's count the number of smiles per square inch when they're back.
You're totally
Alexandra,
right, Fernando. Everyone came back smiling.
Yeah. When
That's
people have a chance to speak and to be heard, it's amazing. It does the magic by itself. Alexandra, just muted you. I still love you, but there was a sound coming from your mic or something. So sometimes you don't notice.
Mhm.
Yeah. Ezra.
Okay, so fantastic. So I'd love to hear some of these examples. Either what you heard from your partner or your own. I'd love to hear them out loud so we can talk about them and see why are they working, the ones that are, and why are they not, the ones that aren't. Oh, we're a small enough group that we can just unmute ourselves and talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
Right.
Katia had her hand up, so maybe I can go after.
Great.
So I think that and that's also one of the most challenging situations I see as a facilitator coming into a culture, working culture, where people are used to those non-speaking beginnings. Everybody comes in, as my partner in the group said, locked to their small screens, staying to themselves, and then somebody starts the meeting by saying, oh, we're still waiting 5 minutes so that everybody can jump in and can join. And then we are right into the topic and get started. So this is kind of my nightmare beginning. And I think a very good one could be to, as we said in the group, or beam people really into another world by a song, piece of art, anything to take them in and get them together into this room, because everybody joins from very different realities. And I also like to give them a question on the hand. With that question, they can already connect, go into conversations, or pin something onto a board, be kind of active already before the original start. And that gives me as facilitator also the chance to decide, are already all people here, or do we wait 2 minutes without saying so and having people already connected and active?
Beautiful. Yeah, raise your hand if you've had the similar bad experience that Katya described in a meeting. Yeah, okay. You're definitely not alone. That is certainly the norm these days. And it's excruciating, and everyone hates it, and we keep on doing it. Yeah. Beautiful examples. Why what do you think works about the good example that Katya described? What are the elements of that you think are effective or useful?
It gets people immediately engaged. Everyone, potentially.
It also puts them in kind of the aha, oh, attention state. This is not what I was expecting. And probably I'm going to be asked more questions along the way.
Mm. Subverting expectations, right? Yes. We all follow scripts when we participate in any kind of gathering or experience. There's all sorts of scripts that we implicitly are enacting and following. And when we do that, we're actually, there's all kinds of research on this, but our brains are sort of designed to do that. They're designed to recognize patterns and then be able to not pay attention because the pattern is recognized, so that you can save cognitive load for other things. So when we subvert an expectation, we're actually like turning people's brains on. We say like, oh, we're calling you into attention or things like that, but it's actually happening in the brain, of that part of the brain that was turned off because I know where I am, I know what's going to happen, gets lit up. Oh, I actually don't know. I have to pay attention. Beautiful. What else? What are some other examples? Good, bad, somewhere in between?
I remember one, the ending would be nice. It was set to be nice, but the person in charge, we put the wrong person in charge, and the energy was like below the ground. So it fell flat. But just because the person was not prepared or ready or with enough energy to do it, so we picked the wrong person. And we could be doing ourselves. We just thought, oh, it's better for that person to be doing the closing. And that was our mistake.
And what do you mean their energy was off?
When the person steps in and you can see the way the person walks, it's going to be wrong.
Mm.
Was kind of awkward, and then start speaking in different topic that was on the table, on the ground, and yeah, was wrong from the beginning to the end. But it's that kind of situation is very hard to correct when it's happening. So probably Carolina remember this. We were together in this.
Yeah, I remember the energy like dropping dramatically, and it was like, and it was a huge group, like I don't know, 100 people.
Yeah.
And then
And our eyes
everybody
just
was
becoming
going.
bigger.
Yeah, everybody was going with this person, like with low energy, and it's supposed to be the end, and like, okay, so it's supposed to be like a celebration.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yes. So how, this is not remarkable, but yes, how we are as facilitators, how we're showing up, the energy that we're bringing, people are reading it, experiencing it. There's all kinds of nonverbal cues that people are getting about what's expected of them and what's happening, and whether they're comfortable, whether they belong, all that sort of stuff. We're communicating regardless of the words that we're saying, and regardless of how perfectly we sketch out this beautiful, run of show closing. How we do it matters just as much as what we're doing. Yeah.
I think one of the disappointing endings that came to mind, one of the pressing things was time, where the workshop itself had taken longer than expected, hadn't gotten quite to where we needed it to end on a strong note, but we still had to cut it. And I had a bow all ready to tie on it, and there was not time to tie the bow. And so it was kind of a, thanks for being here, I'll follow up with an email, that's where the bow will show up. And it didn't feel great to me. I'm sure it didn't feel great to participants, to get that moment of, hey, we did this thing, we finished this thing together.
Oh, I feel attacked, Lori.
Oh.
No, that's my kryptonite. Totally. That's where I fail as a facilitator constantly, is running out of time and then believing the illusion that what's needed most is getting through as much content as I can, rather than being at peace with what has happened and with what hasn't, and recognizing that the closing is actually so fundamental and important to people's experience, far beyond getting that last piece of content. And that if we don't close properly, it can actually undermine the last hour and a half that we spent together, whether or not you got in that last bit of content. I'm getting better, but I am constantly learning that lesson of like, prioritize the closing above all else, especially when we're running late. People feel it. Yeah. Anybody else? please let me know I'm not alone. And okay. All right. Phew. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say there, Ezra, around nonverbal cues that we give off, especially when we're stressed out. I mean, I think I had that happen a couple of weeks ago when I was running a workshop, and I mean, I was trying everything to get people energized and engaged and asking questions and maybe doing the wrong things. And I think that even though I was smiling, you know, you have this nervous, I mean, I was smiling, but it was maybe misplaced because nothing was working. So, you know, you have to smile, you're like, what's happening? But you're smiling, you know, and and still nothing happened. And I wonder, you know, I think sometimes people can maybe read that and maybe be confused because they know nothing is going on and why she's smiling. And that could also cause people to, yeah, I don't know, maybe retreat or shut down or think I'm being fake. And so, yeah, I think that's the kind of energy that we lead with really makes a huge difference. I'm just very much looking forward to learning what to do when these types of situations crop up.
Yeah. Thank you, Amara. Yeah. Excellent. I you know, this is a wider note about facilitation in general, but certainly about our openings and closings. Authenticity really matters. And sometimes naming, often like the scary thing or the unsaid thing, and just naming it out loud opens up so much more than just trying to push past it, you know, and pretend like it's not there. Such as, you start speaking and you're doing your opening and you're like, "Ooh, you know, I'm actually noticing I'm like really nervous right now. I don't know why. Is anyone else feeling that? Why? You know, like that's like, can we get up and just shake? I think I need a little shake, you know, and just be authentic with what your needs are. Because you're right, people are listening and paying attention and know it whether you say it or not. And sometimes just bringing it out from the shadows and naming it is the best way of moving through it, not around it. Or in our closing, sometimes, you know, you've got this whole vision of this beautiful closing and you're noticing like there's just down energy, grief, sadness, whatever is in the room. And you're like, I'm really feeling like a heaviness in the room right now. What's going on? Or what do we need right now? And pivot and move and respond to what's needed in the room. Yeah, authenticity of yourself and of others.
Yeah, and I had that question of why it's so difficult to be authentic. You know, like you have a script, you have a client, you have a lot of things, but when you are authentic, it's kind of a magic. Something happened that it's exactly what meant to happen at that moment. But what happened, I think we stick with the script that we had. I mean, we had like an agenda or something. And then the authenticity, to be authentic, sorry, authentic, it's hard because you lose yourself you are not maybe present. I don't know, and just kind of, it brought to me this, so why I'm not more authentic? Why I keep doing, you know, like being in the script instead of just fill the room and be authentic. It's easy. Is it not? No.
Yeah. Anybody got some ideas around that? Like what gets in the way of our authenticity as facilitators?
Like could be we show ourselves very vulnerable when we do that, and it's, for me personally, it's less about this vulnerability, but about, I do feel what's happening in the room, but having my gender gives me security, and letting go of that needs me to be extremely spontaneous and still find the right thing, or just trust so much into the group to say they know what the next right thing is and then go with it. I think it comes with practice, and the first step is the self-awareness and realization, and the next step is just going with it and learning that the magic happens, as Carolina said.
Yeah, Bruce, what were you going to say?
Oh, you know, I don't remember exactly what I was going to say, but where I went to in my mind is risk. It's a risk to be authentic, to be yourself. I mean, we're taught when we're kids often that we're not supposed to be ourselves, right? So, yeah, when we want to be successful, we want to have people give us good smiley remarks, evaluations. So it's a risk. It's jumping off. I remember one time years ago, decades ago, actually, I was working with a huge HR firm, 100,000 people or so in this HR firm, and I was installing a quality program there, and something wasn't working. Something wasn't working. So it was a good thing I was facilitating this with someone, and I talked to my co-facilitator. I said something's not working. So I decided to let the leaders that I was working with know. And it was like my heart coming out. It's like, uh-oh, this might be the end of this gig. And it was a full-time gig, you know, it was a gig that extended weeks. And I did it, and it was amazing how it just unlocked everything. And how maybe prior to that I wasn't, or we weren't being authentic, or it wasn't what they wanted. And so it was a huge lesson for me.
Yeah. 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 I've learned that too the hard way many times. Many times.
And if I can build on that. So most of my facilitation is delivering Brene Brown's work, their lead work. And so we build on the authenticity and the vulnerability. And so we're describing, by the way, I work in her organization, but I'm not a disciple. So, okay. But a couple of her things that are really powerful for me. So if we describe what vulnerability is, it's uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. We are vulnerable every single time we're in front of the group. And for me, I'm always modeling, you know, how do I show up in that vulnerability? But at the same time, based on her work, the other side of vulnerability is courage. Because if we think about it, there's no act of bravery that didn't require vulnerability. So we can say, yeah, I made myself vulnerable, but I was also brave. So for me, that kind of helps me pull towards the discomfort of, okay, I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to name the thing. Because I'm also modeling, I don't know what's going on. I don't have full control. This isn't perfect. you know, the checking in, even the statement about I'm feeling some heaviness in the room. Oh, another one of her statements, is why I love her body of work, is that who we are is how we lead. I was saying in the conversation with Lori, like, I have to really get clear on the ways that I trip up are really related to things that are about my nervous system, really not about the group so much. So one of my core values is connection. When we get to the end, connection, like it feels like I'm still working through it. Like, oh gosh, I'm going to break this connection. So I don't like endings. I'm sloppy with them. I avoid them. Like I shouldn't even be saying, I'm just noticing the language, how I talk about closings. I don't like them. I'll do either the Irish goodbye, or I start to grieve too soon for the end. Like I do these 3-day workshops, night 2, and I'm like already beginning to detach myself because I can see the disconnections coming. So like I have to know me and how I stand up and model. But I'll never forget, before I learned this, Brené's work, the comment about, as a facilitator, Irish goodbye is like sneaking out. We don't say goodbye, we just sneak out. We just ghost. That the success of this workshop does not depend solely upon me. Like as a facilitator, I bring my services, but we're all participants in it. So anyway, sorry, that was my little riff on this.
Yeah, this is why I said at the beginning that every one of you could teach this. There's so much wisdom here in this room. Yes, it's very different than the Jewish goodbye, which never ends. Just never ends. It just all the way until the next event. You're still saying goodbye. Different strokes. Yes, yeah. Yeah, beautifully said. There's vulnerability and courage in authenticity. And I think, Katya, a lot about, you know, what you said about like the safety of structure. And I always have this like image in my head of like a closed fist or an open hand. It's like manage and allow. And that like nothing can grow inside of a fist. Nothing can move inside of a fist, right? And it's this gesture of allow. I'm going to open my hand and I'm going to let things move and they're going to grow, and it might spill off my hand, right? That's the vulnerability part. Yeah. Because it could all go south and it could all, you know, but nothing happens inside there. So better that than this. And I just notice when I like feel it sometimes, I sometimes do it. I'm like, no, am I gripping, right? Am I managing this or allowing this to happen? Beautiful. Any other examples? Any other examples of some great openings or closings or not so good?
On this theme of managing and allowing, the memory that I shared with Chris was of a recent small community group that mostly was getting together to build connections and potentially collaborate in the future. So we ended with a storytelling activity where everyone had one sentence, and they alternated beautiful things that could happen in the future, and then ways that those beautiful things could break, and ways that this group might fix those things. And we went around the circle just twice. And when we came to the very last person, she was saying a beautiful thing. And she pushed it just to the very edge of socially appropriate. I mean, it was just right on the brink. But she didn't cross over, and the group just erupted in laughter. And we ended on this high note of a new memory and beautiful connection. And it was nothing I could have managed. But in an open space of storytelling like that, there was an allowing that let that magic sort of bubble up to the top. And that was just beautiful to watch.
And we'll come back to this example when I talk a little bit about like how I've sketched out what makes it for a good closing. There's two beautiful examples in there from that example. Yeah. Anything else? Anything else in the room? Great.
I mean,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
no, I just want to say that I really liked Bruce's ritual. His beginning. He uses, I think, Dixie cards. If I'm not, I don't know. Or maybe there's a different name for those cards. You know that these three
Object cards.
cards. Huh?
Object card.
Object cards. Okay. Oh, very cool. Okay, cool. I thought they were Dixie cards. Okay, yeah. So just using those cards to get participants to connect and to share maybe something even more personal and connected with the image that they've picked, I guess. And I just thought that was like a really good idea. So something I'm gonna be looking into as well. Thank you, Bruce.
You're welcome. The way I do it is I hand out these cards and I ask a question around the cards. So, for example, if I'm doing a strategic planning session for a company, I would ask, how is your company like your object? And I find it very powerful. It gets everybody open in terms of thinking creatively and thinking more metaphorically. And it gets them into the content, into what we're about to do, to explore, how to make the company improve or what it's going to be when it grows up.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Can I just gut check here? Are most of you considering openings and closings for virtual facilitation or in-person facilitation, or is it really a mixture of both? Just anybody can both.
My preference is in person. I only did virtual during the pandemic.
Okay. Yeah, you can type it into the chat if that's easier.
Okay.
No, that's totally fine. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I think the last time I did this, it was called virtual facilitation, and so all of my examples, I sort of poured through my experience and used all examples from virtual gatherings. So that's funny. Maybe if other examples, I have so many great examples of in-person stuff that I've done, but I'll leave them out. So maybe if my memory is sparked as we go through this, I'll bring in some of those examples too. Okay. Great. So I think let's start. Yeah, maybe we'll see how this goes. Thank you all for those for all those examples. I'm going to talk just briefly about why we're talking about this in the first place, and then I'll sketch out a few principles that I have around what makes for a good opening and what makes for a good closing, some examples of that, and we'll see how far that takes us. If we've got room at the end, I don't think that we will. We can break off into groups and practice some of this stuff, but let's see where this goes. So with openings and closings, this is probably not news to anybody, especially because you're here, that openings and closings are extremely important, if not the most important thing that you'll do in any facilitation. There's a number of studies that it's called the audience memory curve, that because of something called cognitive processing constraints, essentially like you can't remember everything, an audience disproportionately remembers the first 5% and the last 5% of any experience, and usually one climactic moment, either good or bad. It's like, oh, and the microphone went out for a minute. It's also often, unfortunately, the climactic moment that people remember. There's plenty of classic memory experiments that have happened again and again, like list learning and things like that show that people will consistently remember the first item in a sequence and the last item much better than anything in the middle. So the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes of our gatherings shape our entire experience. They really do. It's what we'll remember. And it also shapes how people will show up during the gathering, and then how they'll feel about it after. In my work, I will spend an ungodly amount of time sharpening my openings and my closings. Again and again and again. So I can't really stress enough just how significant they are and how much they shape, again, how people show up, how they actually experience the rest of your content, and then how they'll feel about it after. So what makes for a good opening? I got everything that you described, all great examples. And to be honest, as I was like compiling this, there's like 20 more numbers that I can get, but and lots of tips and tricks and things like that. But I'm going to focus on 4 main categories. The first is that a good opening invites guests to what I sometimes call crossing the magic circle. It's from research from the experience designer Ida Benedetto, who is a fantastic experience designer, and it's language that she borrows from game design, like really good board games and role-playing games. There's some sort of, Ida Benedetto, her research, Benedetto, her research paper on this is just free on her website. So it's language from game design. These big sort of role-playing games, there's something that helps people cross a threshold, tuning out their prior reality and entering into a new one. Tuning out the prior reality and entering into a new one. Even if that means the tuning out the last meeting that they were in, and this next meeting that they're in. They're still at work, but even that is a potential shift in their reality. Or if they're coming for a 3-day retreat, where are they coming from? What's on their minds? What's their somatic and emotional and mental experience? And how can they cross a threshold from that space into this temporary world that you're creating for them? So again, virtually, some examples. The ritual that I just led for you, super small, right? Super small, but let's put our phones away somewhere where we don't see them, changing the orientation of your screen in some way. The space has been changed. Priya Parker, the experience designer, I went to some talk that she did, and it was a big one. There was like 500 people and on this call deep in COVID. And the way that she opened, she invited everyone to just like put their feet on the floor and notice what was underneath their feet, and then type it into the chat. And it became this like crazy poem, like wood, carpet, earth, this like just beautiful poem. And she said something about just like noticing or imagining, right, that like that we are all people around the world, we are all connected with our feet, our feet on the earth, our feet touching the earth somewhere, and that it connects and expands us all. Expands and connects us all. We're all connected by the earth. It was beautiful, light touch, beautiful. And also a twist on like where are you, where are you calling from? I'm like, oh, here's this different way that we can orient to where we are. It also, in my imagination, brought in the humanness of all people. All of a sudden, I'm like, these aren't just like 500, dots on the ticker of how many people are present, but actually I am now recognizing there's a fundamental humanness. Each one of these is a person with feet. So a good opening invites guests to cross the magic circle. In person, this is silly and probably won't work for like a lot of things that you've done, but I do all kinds of weird shit as a ritual designer. But I was teaching with an experience design studio called Chaos Pilot, teaching their experience design, like immersive week-long learning. And I led something at the end, and I found this cool space in the space that we were in that nobody had actually been to. And I brought some like eucalyptus essential oil and some flowers and branches, and I put the essential oil on the branches. And the space had this kind of like threshold, an actual threshold. And myself and the co-facilitator just stood there and like shook these eucalyptus branches as everyone entered. And so it was this like aromatic car wash almost, that people actually physically moved through, because what I was asking of them in that space, the experience was going deep into a kind of vulnerability that they hadn't accessed yet. And so the thresholding, the crossing the magic circle, had to sort of meet that moment and like signal to them, you're somewhere different and something more is being asked of you here than any other place. So also the senses are all great opportunities. So the second is a good opening. A good opening says something about you. Good opening points to what you care about. It demonstrates your values. That might mean you personally. That might mean the organization that you're representing. That might just be the values of this meeting, of this gathering that we're in, or the purpose of why we're here, which is another way to talk about what we value, what we care about. Why are we here? And a good opening points to that in some way. So one of my favorite examples, again, really small here. I have a friend who is a partner at SYP, the how would I describe them? They're SY Partners. It's like an IDEO studio type place, consultancy. And his team, they had a little ritual that every time they met for any of their meetings within their team, they would start by just holding up from a scale of 1 to 5, like how they're showing up to the meeting. And like maybe if someone's like a 1 or a 2, they'd be like, you could check in, be like, what do you need? But sometimes it was as simple as that. Hey, how we doing? Take a moment and then go in. What does that say about them? It says that on this team, we recognize our fundamental humanity, that we have lives outside of our work, and that we're showing up in ways that are often invisible to our coworkers. And that's okay. And we can make that visible here. And they would do it. This is what I love about it. They would do it even when they were like in a rush. And even when, like you were saying earlier, when they were running out of time or they had only 15 minutes or whatever, they would still do it. And I think that's another way that it actually points what they care about. We'll do it even when it's hard. We'll do this tool. So the third that I love a lot A good opening captures attention by subverting the habitual. Someone was saying this earlier, right? It was not what I was expecting, right? A good opening subverts the habitual, the expectations. An autopilot that we're on, a good opening breaks. So I'm just laughing at all these virtual examples. I had so many. Okay. So I don't know if y'all watched the last time that I spoke here. But in some of my ritual design, first slide, what I'll do is I just start speaking really fast. Like the thing that you need to know about ritual, it's the most important thing about ritual is that they, is that they're neither repeated or rigid or religious. And that the reason that that's important is because there's a situation like, no, I'm not going to. How long could you last if I was speaking like that? You know? And then I was like, how many people's lives are feeling like that? You know, just like a run-on sentence where like Tuesday feels like Thursday and 2026 feels a lot like 2025, right? And so that's why we need rituals. Rituals are punctuation for the run-on sentence of our lives. And so just that sort of tweak of, we all know how workshops usually start, and I say a little bit about myself, and then I'm like, wait, just give me a moment. Do I have sharing? Can I share? Okay, I can, let me just share, like that's how we normally start a lot of things. And I just break people out of that habituation with this like fast speaking run-on sentence. I was working with a a year and a half long cohort of young philanthropists that are going through this deep, long experience of learning how to be better philanthropists. And so for the first meeting was happening online, and what my question was like, okay, what are they expecting? What's the habitual way that they're expecting to show up, and how can we disorient that, connected in some way to what we care about? Number two, demonstrating our values. So they sign onto the Zoom, and they got this message that said like, welcome to your first activity. Like in just a minute, you're gonna receive a call. And we had basically paired people up and given out phone numbers. And we said like voices before faces. So we're gonna get onto the phone, and for the first 10 minutes, we're just gonna meet one person on the phone, and you'll get to know each other and answer this like one question. I think the question was like, how would someone who loves you describe you? And then at 7:10, come back into the Zoom. And then once they arrived, we had everybody introduce the person that they met, rather than introduce yourself as, this is this person and this is what's lovable about them. And the reason that we did that, it was connected to a purpose, which was that a community is actually formed by individual connections. A community is just a bunch of individuals with one-on-one connections in a big group. And so we wanted to, right from the start, from the very beginning, preface individual connection amongst them rather than just group connection. And we wanted people to like have each other ability partner, and it connected to some sort of closing thing of like, you're going to check in person in a month and blah, blah, blah. One way that I love to subvert the habitual, especially in in-person gatherings, and this is connected to my last, 'cause to my last principle, which is a good opening is generous and empathetic. And so one of the ways that I love to subvert the habitual is especially in person, is I love to gift people things right when they arrive. Especially if they're like paying to come. Like it's usually this like transactional thing, like I paid you, and so like, oh, like what's your name? Let me check you in. Okay, have you paid yet? Okay, great, then go over there. It's all this transactional stuff. And right from the beginning, I'm like, thank you so much for being here. Here's a gift. I led this really weird performance art ritual at a club in New York based on the holiday of Purim. It's a Jewish holiday of masking and costuming and debauchery. And people arrived, and before they ever got to the check-in table, there was someone with a massive bowl of pistachios. And they were just like, hi, welcome, here's a pistachio. No explanation. No explanation. Just here's a pistachio. Because the whole holiday is about like, you know, getting out of your norm and your expectation. It's about unmasking and masking, like cracking open your shell. We didn't tell people that, but it was just weird and different. And it subverted the habitual expectations that they had. And it was a gift. They're like, oh, I got something. Everyone loves getting things. Everyone loves getting things. They're also empathetic. And I think that this is actually kind of what informs the whole process here, which is really tapping into what is the experience of this person as they're arriving to my event. What are all the pain points? What are all the highs? What are all the lows? And how can I meet them? How can I soften the lows and heighten the highs? And if you're really, really giving yourself a deep movement into that empathetic imagination, all kinds of bye, Bruce. Thanks for being here. All kinds of possibilities emerge. So for instance, I was working at Esalen, the retreat center in the Bay Area, and it's a long drive. It's like a 3-hour drive, and was designing this retreat, this solo retreat for people. And we sent out this email before they arrived of essentially like, we know you got a long drive, and as you go on this journey, moving away from the city, moving away from your life, here's some playlists and some podcasts for you to listen to, just to start getting you into the mode of and to learn. Like, if you want to learn a little bit about Esalen, here's this podcast. If you want to tap into this, here's this other thing that you can listen to. I did that for my wedding also, as a retreat style wedding. And so I was like, here's a playlist of our favorite music. And I connected it to our purpose. Since like a wedding, I think at its best is about like deepening your knowledge of the two of us, of who we are. And that will flow through the entire weekend. But here's some of our favorite music to listen to accompany you on your drive, which is like a bonus principle. This is just a design principle in general, but obstacles as opportunities. So we have this obstacle. People have to go on a 3-hour drive to come to our wedding. How can we treat that as an opportunity? There's also, so for me personally, I think, Kati, you reference it, the arrival and the 5 minutes of like awkward chit chat while we wait for people arrive is, for me, empathetically excruciating. And so I empathetically imagine that it might be for other people, like the chit chat, the awkward conversation, the waiting. And so for a virtual course that I taught called the Ritual Lab, when people arrived, here's what I had up. I had some music playing. I had everyone muted, and there was just this slide. Welcome, deep breath, you're here now. We'll get started when everyone arrives. That's when we're going to start. So until then, close tabs, that's my thing. Get some water, pour yourself a drink. You can see also some of the ways in which, number 2, this is like, says something about me, saying something, demonstrating some of my values, some of the things that I care about. But that's how people arrived, and they could just stay in silence and avoid the awkward chit chat until everyone was there. And then when we started, we just went in. Notice also the subversion of the habitual, which is like, I'm sure that there's facilitators who will say something like this. Hey, welcome. Oh, hey, Lori, welcome. Yeah, we're just going to wait until we get started. So take your time, and they're just saying that over and over and over again. So that's the habitual. How can we subvert that? I'm going to just make a slide and put it up there. And so even I'm not talking, even I can go get a drink of water too. Okay. Openings. All these topics also apply to endings. Absolutely. Yeah. There's some bonus ones that I'll put in for closings as well. But yeah, absolutely. Quick pause for questions or comments or ideas.
I just find it very insightful. I mean, what you've shared. Never thought of it that way. So I'm really learning a lot from your experience. And yeah, just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Amara. I appreciate that. All right, then I will race through these closings because, as you know, I'm not a timely person with my workshops. I revealed that early on to take it out of the shadows and bring it into the light. So I'll race through these last ones and give us some time at the end. So what makes for a good closing? All of those things. And a few bonus things. A good closing zooms in. And then number 2 is a good closing zooms out. So zooms in. What happened? What happened? What did we just do? Taking a moment to remember, to acknowledge, to reflect a little bit on what happened. I have this visual, and I've actually done this before. I had this visual of like how do I say? It's a visual. This is the visual. It's sort of like bringing your fingers through the sand of the experience, sort of like tracing it back. Like, where were we? What happened? There's some masterful facilitators who, especially on those long retreats, those 3-day things, the whole time they're taking notes, little inside jokes, the line that got that big laugh. Of course, the sessions. Chaos Pilot did this incredible where you came down at the end and they had this long, this long black piece of paper, and they had hand drawn basically a map of the last 5 days together, and each of like the highlight, each of the main workshops that we covered, little jokes. It was gorgeous. I can send a photo afterwards. And it took time, and it was amazing. It really made an impact. Then you like lit a candle and you sort of put it next to the things that you wanted to remember, something like that. Beautiful. So like what happened? And then what happened? Why does it matter? That's zooming out. What happened and why does it matter? zooming out can also mean sort of zooming forward, like zooming out beyond. So like, what of this world do I want to bring back to my other worlds? So like I've done this ritual, I've done it virtually and in person, where at the end, often bigger sort of workshops, retreats, things like that, I'll ask people to write a letter of when they get back home, like, what do they still want to remember about themselves? These are usually things that are a little bit more emotional and less practical. But you know, what do they still want to take? What do they want to take home? What do they want to remember when they get back home about themselves? And then again, subversion of the expected, because we all have done those. Like, you write a letter and then we're going to send it to you in a year. No, we're going to do like a tarot where I put all the letters into the center, and then you go and you pick a letter, and and it's folded up, and you don't get to open it until you cross the threshold back into your home. And I say something like, I trust in the magic that like everyone will receive exactly the message that they're meant to receive. And like, I've gotten stories, you know, of people that like, you have no idea, you know, like that kind of serendipitous magic. I've done it online as well, where they'll send me the emails. They'll email, they'll send it to me, and then we've chosen some date in the future, usually a symbolic connected to the group in some way, and then I send out the emails. And there's a fun way that you can choose who's like goes to who, and becomes a whole thing. Stephen Bartlett, who's got a podcast called Diary of a CEO, he's got this closing ritual tradition where at the end, the guest leaves a question in this book that he's got for the next guest. And he doesn't read it until he asks it of the next guest. And also that person doesn't know who the next guest will be. So they leave a question, and then at the end of the podcast, he opens up the book and he says, this is from this person. And this is the question, and then that person gets to write it. And it's just, so right, it's a zooming out a little bit of, and connecting to the past and to the future. Carolina said something similar. This is our 47th virtual facilitation. All of a sudden, woo, I've zoomed out a little bit from just this experience to something a little bit beyond. Okay, I said I'd zoom. The last thing here, a good closing. Hopefully this will not come as a surprise to anybody. A good closing's final words aren't logistics. Can't stress that enough. I cannot tell you the amount of weddings that I have been to where it's like, kiss, yay! Okay, everyone, thank you. Can I have your attention? So the food is going to be in there, and the museum tour starts in 30 minutes. You have to meet over there. You're like, what the fuck? Like, all that love just dissipated. All those good vibes. Don't close on logistics. Just say it before the kiss. Before the kiss. Make it special. Ooh, we want to stay in this moment just a little bit longer, so I'm going to tell some announcements. Whatever, right? Yes, the owner of the blue Tesla. This can also give, I think, Chris, to your point about the Irish goodbye, having some sort of closing words that aren't logistics is part of the way to say, this is over. Priya, again, she's got at the end of some of her courses, she'll say like, I now pronounce this lab closed. That's it. I've borrowed some language from a group called the Radical Fairies, who often say at the end of their week-long bacchanalian whatever, they're all in a big circle, and they'll say, may the circle be open but unbroken. I love that. I use that all the time. Use it all the time.
Can you say that again?
May the circle be open but unbroken.
Ah, okay.
Open but unbroken. Radical Fairies. We're over. I've seen beautiful facilitators, especially in musical settings. They're playing their last song. They're playing, they drop it low. Announcements. Here's what you got to know. They're still playing some music. Yeah, music, announcements. And then at the end, they go back into the song. We all get to sing together at the very end. And I will demonstrate one last closing since we are at 10:29. And this is what we have time for, and I want to give space for a closing because I said I would do it. So I don't want to be a hypocrite. First of all, thank you. Thank you, each and every one of you, for coming. Thank you for your wisdom and your experience and your ideas. Here's what we'll do. I'm going to give us one more minute with nowhere to go and nothing to do, because I know all of you are going to close this and then go right into your emails. I'm going to do the same. And so I'll give 1 minute where we don't have to do that, a little bubble in time. And in that minute, just reflect on if there is one thing that you want to take away with you, just one idea. You want to put it in your pocket and you want to remember it for a week. Just think about it. Just reflect on it. And after that minute, I'm actually going to close the Zoom so you don't have to. We don't have to do the awkward goodbye thing. So if you want to say goodbye now. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, Ezra. Thanks,
thank you,
everyone.
Fernando. Thank you, Carolina. Thank you, all of you. You can turn off your cameras. Just give yourself a minute. Nowhere to go, nothing to do. One thing you want to take with you. May the circle be open but unbroken.